Welcome all you hobby horn dogs to another Saga Thursday. Today we are looking at the last faction we have yet to review for the original Saga Dark Ages book, and that is the Welsh. So we took a look at the Anglo-Danes, the Vikings, and the Normans. The fourth faction in the book is the Welsh, and actually I've kind of been dabbling with these guys a little bit. I'm kind of interested in the Welsh. As a shooting army, the dynamics are really different to the close combat armies that I've faced. So I don't know too much about them. I'm still just getting into these guys. So I brought on a good friend of mine, the Silver Fox, Mr. John Stentz, and he has got extensive Saga experience with many war bands, and you will likely be seeing his lovely mug on some future videos for other factions as well. But today he is going to come on and we are going to do our review of the Welsh battleboard. All right, we got Big John here, the Silver Fox himself.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
Good, excellent. So you and me, we're getting together. We're going to talk some Saga. Is that right?
Cool. Yeah, that's right.
Awesome, cool. So we're going to talk about the Welsh Day. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds like an awesome idea.
Okay. Well, you kind of got me thinking about the Welsh, actually, in our game at the Saga Storm when we were just chit-chatting about my models.
Okay.
And I was kind of wondering what else I could use them as. Mm-hmm. And, my Feared has a bunch of spears, but I mounted them all kind of overhand because I don't know, I kind of like how that looks better as spear guys go. And they do kind of look like javelins just because the War Games factory, like the thickness of their spears is so skinny compared to other lines, so they do kind of look like javs. So you kind of got me thinking about the Welsh. And have you gotten some action in with these guys?
Yeah, I've played them a bunch of times, and I've played against them a number of times, and seen some different builds that have been run in my games against. And I guess I've tried a couple things, but I mostly do foot sloggers when it comes to the Welsh. So they're fun. I've enjoyed them. Yeah,
and actually, I did get a game in against Barnaby. He was using his Vikings, so I got to try the Welsh for the first time, and it was really fun just because of the shooting just adds that extra element, kind of where I've been playing the Anglo-Danes and the Anglo-Saxons, and just having that extra kind of phase and thinking about those abilities kind of really kind of refreshed the game for me, kind of. And the ability to kind of use the terrain and stuff like that, I thought was really cool.
So, they're all about the terrain, and I think they play very differently than how I normally play Saxons or Danes, where I play those guys real defensively. And the Welsh, you got to get out there, and I mean you can't overextend, but you got to get out and get aggressive.
Yeah, I did do some of that in my game against Bear, but it was cool. Just playing with the unit sizes and stuff too was really interesting. Trying to figure out what the best size for the different units in your kind of hit and run kind of format. So, okay, well let's just take a look at the faction rules real quick and see what's kind of different about them. So we did mention the javelins. So the warlords have javelins, and the warriors and hearthguards also have javelins.
Yep. Everybody's got a sharp pointy stick.
Everybody's got something. Now to kind of make up for that, the warlord is fine. He doesn't take any penalty or anything, but the warriors and the hearthguard reduce their armor against shooting by 1.
Right.
So, and they can all be mounted. So Your warriors would have an armor of 2, I guess, if they were mounted.
Yeah, that sound
Don't
a little rough? You don't want to find yourself standing too close after you activate.
Some crossbows or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is the warlord. He's still a 6, so he doesn't suffer for the shooting. And then you can take the levies, and they'll have bows, slings, or you can give them javelins as well.
Of course, right. I mean, yeah. Only the warlord is rich enough to actually have decent protection. Everybody else, too poor.
Yeah.
It's not quite the Irish. I mean, some of the Welsh actually have shoes.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, so the feared for my Saxons, they're mostly wearing cloth, and they're kind of the crappiest dude in the Anglo-Saxons warband. But I was thinking those would be the Hearthguard for my Welsh warband, and then I would pick up some dudes without shoes and pants. They're just kind of wearing the robes, and those would be like the warriors. So the rich guys, look at those fancy dudes, literally fancy pants. Look at those fancy pants.
Yeah, that would totally work.
Okay, so I think these faction rules are pretty decent, pretty cool, because if your opponent doesn't have shooting, then you kind of just have a bonus javelin on everybody for free. There really isn't a downside.
There isn't. My latest game against Welsh, when we were in Adepticon doing the Saga Grand Melee, I was playing North Scale, and not a lick of shooting. I did all big axes, and I wish I could have thrown some axes, because they have nothing against
sweet.
Welsh there. It would have been super sweet.
Yeah, and I don't know, probably the majority of your games, I think you won't go up against shooting. I would say barely a majority, but probably a majority. Would you say that?
You mean like in a tournament setting where you're just in a random
just
mix
in general.
of whomever?
Yeah,
Irish have their Irish can be loaded to bear for shooting, and in the Welsh, but as far as a lot of the other Dark Ages guys, I mean, maybe a little bit of combined arms like the Normans do, but no, there's not tons and tons of shooting, at least in what we have going around here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, so kind of, I don't know, goes back to if your warband can take a shooting unit, you really should think about just throwing one in to kind of keep warbands like these and just mounted units a little honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though a lot of the times doing that doesn't really mesh with your board necessarily.
Right,
it's just kind of its own thing on its own.
Try to convince the Viking players they should all have levy with bows, and see how far that gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna hit up the Welsh board now. So we've established all the Hearthguard warriors got jabs. Now looking to the left, we've got some nice, is this Celtic Welsh names of all these units here. The Tulu, Priodar, Bonadig. So it looks pretty standard, except when we get to this combat pool, which I always thought all the combat pools were the same, but actually going through these, a lot of them are slightly different. Looking at this one, it looks like you can use it for melee or shooting to gain 1 attack die, and then 2 if it's a rare. So you don't have the option for defense, which is what I've seen in some other boards. Before we get going, so when you're throwing javelins, every 2 warriors is 1 javelin, and every Hearthguard is 1 javelin. So even if you have fairly big units, you're not chucking a lot of javelins. So do you actually get a lot of use out of this combat pool when you're to get more shooting?
I do. It depends on your situation. If you've got that strike where you're not needing those dice to do something else, of course, and you want to try to make a decent shooting strike, and maybe you're gonna, you're juicing up that 1 unit. That's just it. Is whether it's the Hearthguard or the warriors, and say it's a 10-pack of warriors. 5 shots doesn't sound that big a deal, but if you throw 3 dice in the combat pool, all of a sudden it's 8 shots, and that's a way better deal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that was one thing in my test game I never did, but going back, I was kind of thinking about it. And it might have been something I should use a little bit more. So, okay. Well, why don't we pop up to the top of the middle row there
Sure.
and Children of the Land. Do you want to read out that one?
Sure. Children of the Land is in orders, and it says, discard this die. During this turn, all your foot units do not suffer any movement reduction for whatever reason.
Okay, cool. So that looks like you can use any die for that.
Yeah, it's all of them.
Rare. So that the cross is the common one, correct?
Yep.
And then it looks like a Celtic knot is the uncommon, and then the dragon would be the rare. So you can use any one of these. So
in case you roll all dragons, because you always have spare dragons, right?
Believe me, you could definitely use some dragons on this board.
Yeah.
We can get into that towards the end. But okay, so this is pretty cool, I think. There's one obvious thing to use it for, and then I think one not so obvious thing that you can use this for. So what, when you use this, what are you most often doing?
This is always I'm coming through the woods, or I'm coming through the rocky ground, because maybe we should say that, typically when I'm playing Welsh, I'm bidding maximum terrain pieces because I want that board full of terrain, because I need to use that terrain for some of these abilities, and for protection against if your opponent's got shooting. Hey, what better place to be than in the terrain, because you're getting a little bump right there to cover your weakness. So you want it because you don't want to get slowed down when you have to get positioned for your attacks, or your positioning for the counterattacker, or just the positioning. Yeah, you don't want to get slowed down.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely warband where you want to bid max terrain each time, and just go for the biggest pieces.
The big pipe plates. You're like, yeah, I'll take that that long sized hard terrain, and I'll put that on my side. Just on my side a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit in here. Cool. So yeah, I think that's definitely the main use of it. It's totally cool. A lot of the times I think you're going to have these battles over the terrain. So just popping this once, and then all of your units can kind of move unhindered, and you can kind of safely throw your javelins, and that you're going to be out of range kind of deal too. You can jump people easily. And then I think the second thing you could use this for, and if you can't, maybe you can correct me, but I think once you have this up, your opponent would not be able to use fatigue to slow you down. Do you?
I agree. That's the way I would.
That's the way
look
it's
at it.
Suffer any movement reduction for whatever reason.
Right, for whatever reason. So I would even wonder. I mean, trying to think of what that one Pagan Roost ability is that freezes you. I don't know if it might. If that would work. I think that's probably a activation cancellation one, but
I just went to the Welsh abilities, a little blurb, and it does confirm, your opponent's fatigue or using your fatigue won't slow you down.
Okay.
And it is just for foot movements as well. So your cav, which you can take, aren't going to benefit from this particular ability. So I think that's super cool, because it seems like when you're in a really intense kind of high-level saga battle, towards the end of the battle, everybody's got fatigue, and there's always some sort of activation that you need to do, and you always get screwed because they burn that one fatigue, and you're out by 2 tiny inches. So overall, I think that's a pretty good ability.
It's great value because it affects all your units. So I mean, because in your example there, we were like, oh yeah, well, I know I'm going to get that fatigue burned to slow my movement. So you go ahead and you rest that unit to take it off, if it is just one. But if you have multiples, I guess you're SOL on that. But you just know that this turn, no one's slowing any of my stuff down. So I can either move up to fire my javelin, shoot them off, or I can fall back because I found myself surrounded, or in that bad situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Any kind of ability that affects all of your units, it's gonna be pretty good. Probably worth the dice.
Yeah, good value.
Okay, so moving down to Holy Ground. This is activation reaction. So discard this die when an enemy foot unit is activated to reduce its movement from long to medium, medium to short, short to very short. You can't reduce the movement below very short, and it takes an uncommon dice roll. So this one seems pretty good. I think the obvious thing is you move up, throw javelins, and you don't want them to just charge you right away next turn. So you pop this baby to turn it into a multiple activation kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then I think going from L to M is always really awesome on cavalry. If you
it is. If you've got all those foot troops.
Especially if they have multiple fatigues on them, you could really slow a unit down with multiples here. I think just playing this faction has got me thinking about using their fatigue to slow their movement down a lot more to prevent the close contact stuff. So I think this definitely is going to play in with your overall battle plan. And for an uncommon, I kind of, there's not too much that requires an uncommon on here. So you probably have the dice. It does seem kind of expensive for what it does. I don't know.
I think it's a little expensive, but you're right. There's not a lot of uncommons called for on this. I mean, we'll get to it later, but ambush is, if it's that turn where you're having that melee and you need the double uncommons in there. So we'll get to that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to hit and run. So this is another activation reactivation. Discard this die when an enemy unit is activated. And before the enemy activation is resolved, activate one of your units within medium of that unit. And so basically you take an activation, which would be a move. Could be a shoot, I guess.
Probably
typically you didn't move and throw jabs. But you could use it with levies, with bows or something like that. The caveat is you can't move into combat with them. You may not engage melee. And it takes a dragon, the first dragon we're going to see. Not the last dragon. Okay, so I think this definitely just builds off what we talked about with Holy Ground. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, probably the value of placing it at a dragon is representative of, if you feel like Holy Ground, if the designers felt Holy Ground's an uncommon, well, this one should be a rare on the die. And it seems like this is a good one for a planned situation where after all your activations, you've got that unit hanging out there. Maybe you're gonna go. You've got Children of the Land up, and hit and run is gonna get played, and you're gonna move back into the woods at 6, or at medium 6 inches. And you're gonna throw the javelins out of the woods, and then knowing that the other guy, if he didn't plan for that right, he's gonna need 2 activations to get to you because you moved outside of short, because he's coming into the woods, which is just where you want him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you can definitely set up some nice tricks. I also think it's a good, just an all-purpose. If you don't know what you're going to do, leave it there, because a lot of times you get surprises sprung on you during the opponent's turn due to multiple activations and stuff like that. So whereas Holy Ground in order to prevent them from getting into contact with you, you kind of have to plan for it and know that those extra 2 inches are going to make the difference. Well, with hit and run, usually, unless you're going up against cavalry, it's gonna get your ass out of there. For sure, basically a 6-inch move in any direction will probably take you directly away from those guys.
Right.
So you can use it to, kind of go after a different unit or just get the hell out of there. So yeah, I think that one's pretty good if you got the dragon.
Yep.
Strength lies in number. Does yours say strength lies in number as well?
Yes, on my board it says that.
Strength lies in number. I guess maybe that is something like an old-timey person might say.
Well, funny enough, in the printed, in the book that came, that the battleboard came with, it does say numbers.
Oh, okay. So they can't even claim. That's an old-timey Welsh saying.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not enough. We were in Wales earlier in the year, and there's...
Oh, cool. Suffer any jab attacks?
Yeah. No, luckily. But when you made your statement earlier about the names, I thought, the funny thing is it seemed like all the words over there, because everything had Welsh names to go with the English names. And it was,
like the... road signs and stuff.
Yeah, the road signs. It was, trying to drive the car, I spent twice as much time looking at the road sign to figure out, okay, what does this say? Nope, that's not the English part. Okay, there's the English part. And, all the C's, W's, Y's, and D's. More D's. If there's not more D's, then there need to be more W's and Y's.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're just hitting you hard with that. It's got to be pretty fun. What is that?
It's fun.
What is the weirdest name? Is there one, not to digress, but one weird name that really stuck out to you?
Not that I could even pronounce.
Okay.
So I can't even really say.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you read out this activation ability?
Strength lies in number.
Yeah.
Melee. Discard this die. If you have more models engaged in this melee than enemy models, gain 1 attack die per every friendly model that outnumbers enemy models, and it requires a common.
Yeah, that is juicy.
This is super juicy. Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of this one a lot, and it's scary when it's coming at you.
Yeah, for the number of attacks it could generate potentially for just a single common.
Yeah,
you're not going to find on a lot of boards a better bang for your buck.
This has got a good one. Yeah, you play this on that right situation, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck.
And then I think too they kind of needed to put this in there maybe as an incentive to put together a bigger unit.
Yeah,
or one or two bigger units. I don't know that running all smaller units would be the best thing either, but you definitely want to have a nice big a unit of some kind that can take advantage of this, I think, because it is definitely nice and juicy, and you're going to be using that. Because I guess the thing to always remember is with a lot of shooting factions, your dudes are worse in close combat, but the Welsh in combat, they're just the same guys. They don't have too many abilities that can support them and do fancy stuff, but they do have this one. So
this is a good one. This is a go-to. Like, circle it on your battle board. This is a go-to.
Yeah, because even if you just outnumber them by 2, or even just 1, like that's. On the combat pool, you throw in a common for 1 attack.
Yeah.
So you're never gonna go wrong there. You can envision some nice big 9, 10 dice circlings of their warlord, but even if you can get 2 or 3 or 4 out of it, you're gonna be doing pretty good.
Well, this is the one too where you have that big pack of warriors. 12 pack would be fantastic, but just say they're just even a 10 pack and you catch out that 4 pack of Hearthguard. Well, you just totally evened up that fight.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. Trying to make those uneven fights a lot more even. Okay, good deal. Well, if we got a sweet melee ability, we got to have a sweet shooting ability as well, I would say. So we've had movement kind of stuff so far. I got a little melee. So finally, we're getting to some shooting stuff, which is the Deadly Strike. This one is 2 commons. So you're generally going to be able to do it, but it's going to take 2 dice. Now, this is shooting. I'm going to discard the dice, maybe only use when shooting with javelins, so your levy won't be able to take advantage of this if they have the other missile weapons. Reduce the enemy armor by 1. Totally sweet right there. And then re-roll any attack dice that failed to hit. But there is a kicker, because at the end of the shooting, you add 1 fatigue to your unit.
Right.
So, okay, what did you think of this? Now, just to clarify, you could use this ability if you moved and shot with your javelins, or is this... do you get what I'm saying? There might be some confusion whether it has to be like a standalone shooting activation.
It's, my recollection is that the shooting of javelins is a shooting ability that's tied onto the end of the movement, so you can use shooting abilities.
Okay,
are you thinking the same way? I mean, I can pull my CNC rulebook out and double check it, but
no, that I took a look at it before our game, and that's kind of what I thought as well. But sometimes people, if you play a lot of minis games, you make these leaps of judgment that are you're kind of reading too much into it sometimes. So yeah, I agree with you on this. You can move, do your normal move, throw your javelins, and if you want to pop this ability during that, I think you're more than able to. So because
it's just like the combat pool, which is shooting, and you can throw those onto those javelin throws and then the movement.
Yeah, exactly. No one would argue that. But when they're down to just a couple Hearthguard and you're rolling in with this, you never know what people might come up with. So
this is definitely the Deadly Strike, is when you decided to load up your shooting attack pool and you really want to let them have it.
Okay. Do you use this one a lot? Because I could see it if it didn't cost the fatigue, you'd want to use it like all the time. But since it adds a fatigue, it makes you kind of think, and I don't like thinking too hard, to be honest.
I don't use it an awful lot, partly because my experience has been that shooting is hit or miss with a 4+ save. It's just sometimes when dice are hot, you roll a bunch of hits and you're like, haha, and then they roll all saves and you're like, and how many dice did I just spend to make that happen?
Yeah, I think we're going to get into that and into the overall kind of tactics kind of thing.
But
it's kind of dangerous because you really can't expect it to do anything, because if you do, you're probably going to be disappointed.
You probably are.
And then when you use Deadly Strike, you're really going to expect something to happen. And
you invested a lot in it, and you got a penalty at the end of it too. So I think that's the big thing that it makes it not my go-to, is just the fatigue that comes out of it.
Yeah, I kind of think you're going to use this one when not when you're lined up against the 6 or 8 man Hearthguard unit. In turn 2, you're going to use this kind of later in the game when that Hearthguard unit is down to 2 or 3 guys, and you're kind of just really banking on wiping them out, getting rid of that Saga dice, and then
exactly,
you're not going to have any enemy nearby to be able to pounce on you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a every turn kind of ability, but if you can catch somebody out, I think you'll find it to be pretty cool, because there isn't a lot of reroll stuff. Any kind of rerolls are pretty good if you can get them, especially I think shooting at Hearthguard or even going for the Warlord.
Yeah.
I think you might actually be able to catch the warlord out potentially. If they don't have any guys next to him or something like that, you could go for kind of like a Hail Mary type thing. Because you'd be hitting on 5s with rerolls. Maybe that is something you'd want to go for.
Well, no, most warlords are hitting on 6s with shooting.
But you're going to reduce their armor by 1 with
yes,
Deadly Strike.
Yes,
so
I'm sorry. There we go.
That's where, it gets kind of
There you go. It got a little bit better.
Yeah, most of the time can't really recommend shooting at the warlord, but if he's by himself and you got the dice and you're going to have 5 or 6 shots, maybe you can give it a shot. Yeah,
that's true. You're right. I mean, because you only got to get 2 through, and if he's got no buddies, he's dead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are going to kick it up to ambush. So this is a melee ability that costs 2 uncommons, and you're going to discard those dice in a melee involving 1 foot unit that has all of its models in uneven ground. They gain 3 attack and 3 defense dice. So I think that is pretty darn sweet.
It's real sweet. I think this is a pretty good value. I mean, for 2 uncommons, it sounds expensive, but that's a lot of dice you just got for those. Yeah,
and kind of as we chatted before, there isn't too much that you're going to be using the commons for on here necessarily.
Right.
So you have to have a unit kind of sitting in the hard ground or the woods. What I kind of like is this kind of turns the forests into kind of give you a melee buff kind of thing, where hard ground gives you a little melee buff, but the woods just protect against shooting and slow you down, but they don't, they're not going to change the melee combat, where this is an ability that will actually kind of benefit you in close combat when you're in the woods. And woods is like the one thing that you're always going to see on any table pretty much.
Right.
So that is pretty cool. And that is where we are going to call it for today to keep this video down to a reasonable length for the YouTubes. If you got any comments or feedback about what we've chatted about so far, go ahead and drop me a line below and we can chat about it further. John will be back next week with the conclusion of the Welsh battleboard. We will take a look at the remaining abilities and go into some of the tactics and sort of list design that goes in all together with the Welsh. So definitely looking forward to that. Like and favorite this shit. Share it with a friend. Subscribe. Become a hobby horn dog today. Saga!